For 13 years, mom refused to birth her child until the father returns.
In the first story, we see a pregnant woman who is crying and begging her husband to not leave her. It is the month of December, and the entire city is covered in a thick blanket
Chat, it is cuffing season. Right now, it's cuffing season.
snow. The woman can barely walk due to her 8-month pregnancy, but despite this, her husband is adamant on leaving. He says that he will be back in a few days after gathering some supplies. Before going out though, he hands her a jar of magical roots, which will apparently prevent the baby from being born. 13 years pass by, but the man is still not returned. The house is in a state of utter chaos, as we see maggots crawling through the sea of garbage and filth. Miraculously, the woman is still alive and still pregnant. The roots seem to have worked, but the only problem is that her baby has grown inside of her womb. It has now become the size of an adult human, because of which the woman is unable to stand up or move properly. Wow, that thing's a bigger baby than iDubbbz. She is still hopeful that her
She
husband
is
will
dragging
return
that
soon,
whole
and
ass
so
baby
she
across
keeps
the thing like that, bro.
calling out his name. Shockingly, the baby inside of her womb has now started talking. Its gender is not specified, but it can make genuine conversations with the woman, like asking her what they're going to have for food, or when he's dead.
What is this, bro? Is this a stomach or two butt cheeks? Oh my
Ad
god.
coming.
Or
How many years until AI takes over the planet?
one
my
day, the
gosh,
woman
bro.
catches someone's pet cat in her trap and eats it for dinner. While the act is very ruthless and inhumane, it is the only way she can survive. However, she lies to her baby that she cooked a rabbit so as not to offend it. That night, as the woman is
How is she's not dead, bro? How do you carry that much weight on your organs like that, my mans?
getting ready to sleep, she experiences extreme contractions due to her pregnancy. She rushes to the jar to ingest the root, but sadly for her, they are no more. It appears as if the woman ate the last strand in the morning. The sight of the empty jar terrifies her, and she drops it to the floor, crying. Just then, the baby inside of her announces that it is
Coming out.
The woman begs it to stop, saying, "Please don't leave me." But the baby
That's
is
so
made
weird.
up
Wow,
its
what's good,
mind.
Big T?
It simply says,
There is enough room for the two of us.
W sub, bro.
"Oh God." The next second, the giant baby starts twisting inside the woman's body, causing her to die in an instant.
So like, how does he get out? He's just gonna sit there and just like hug on the walls?
Then a gruesome montage shows the woman being completely disemboweled by the baby. God. A few hours later, after the procedure ends, the baby in the body of its mother stands up for the first time. It cleans up the excess flesh on the floor, throws it outside, and then sews its own stomach.
What's
Some
good,
weeks
monkey?
later, we see the baby living a
I
completely
missed you,
normal
bro.
life. It has made the house neat and tidy, along with itself.
This is a
right
move, I
then, its
think.
father arrives at the door after 13 long years. He acts as if he was only gone for a day or two. The baby looks at him in disbelief.
My man got the milk and left, Chad. This man right here, that's crazy.
But the man, who is unaware of what happened, approaches it with lust in his eyes. The movie ends as he unzips the baby's clothes. to make
You are
romance with it. Are you
disgusting.
kidding? Are you kidding?
You're
me?
disgusting. That is your child.
I gotta draw some kind of line, man. The second movie starts in a rural village in America, where a 6-year-old boy named Troy lives with his parents. His dad, Jeffrey, is a neo-Nazi skinhead who despises everyone apart from his own race. Troy's mom, Krista, however, is a
So he's racist.
well-mannered and calm lady. Despite being an odd couple, the two love their son a lot and always make sure that he is happy. One day, they go on a trip with some other neo-Nazis and have a fun time at the beach. Jeffrey bets against everyone that his son can land a perfect aim with his rifle. This gets everyone excited, so they bet $50 each. To their surprise, the 6-year-old expertly manages to strike his target from a distance. This makes Jeffrey very proud, and he quickly collects the winning cash from his gang. At night, the family goes to a department store to spend their winnings.
So he's a
Troy is
Nazi?
given the freedom to choose anything he wants, including beer and chocolate. While they are at the counter, Troy spots a black man named JD playing with a toy
Nah.
and innocently smiles at him. JD also smiles back, and the two seem to have formed an instant bond. However, their happy moment is rudely cut short when the racist Jeffrey scolds the man for looking at his son. He even speaks some racial slurs in front of everyone. As expected,
Nah,
this
that's
enrages
crazy.
JD, and he curses at Jeffrey before leaving the store. Unfortunately, the altercation turns out to be the start of a brutal brutal war. Jeffrey, who is infuriated that he was cursed at, immediately calls his gang and asks them to arrive outside the store. Krista tries her best to calm her husband down, but all in vain. Even little Troy can do nothing but watch his father become aggressive more and more by the second.
Man, that is
and they beat the hell out
crazy,
of the man
bro.
in front of his own family.
That
JD's
is
kids
wild,
are terrified
dude.
inside their car, but their screams and cries for help only fall on deaf ears. After the beatdown is done, Jeffrey makes sure to humiliate the poor man even more by pouring a gallon of milk over his face. Joke's on you,
dude?
bitch. Milk's delicious. All this is
Milk is
observed by
good.
one of JD's sons,
It's very
Bronny,
good.
who appears to have vengeance in his eyes. The next morning, Jeffrey takes his son out for a ride as if nothing has happened. They hike the forest, roam the city, and then prepare to return home at night. However, on the way, they are stopped by a mysterious van, which is blocking the road. As usual, Jeffrey becomes aggressive and gets out of his car to take matters into his own hands. But when he approaches the van, a group of guys beats him up and loads him inside.
Oh, no,
Little
they
Troy
kidnapped
notices
them.
this from his car and he
That's the note from
screams
the
at the
last
men to let
guy?
his dad go.
Yeah.
He even runs behind their van for quite some distance, but in the end, he gets tired and eventually gives up. Surprisingly, the perpetrator behind the entire operation is revealed to be none other than Bronny. He is meticulously
That Bronny James?
planned something evil to exact vengeance for what happened to his dad. In the next scene, an unconscious Jeffrey is brought to a shady-looking apartment where several of Bronny's men tie him up and start working on him. At first, they inject him with various substances. Then
they
they
got
shave
him.
his entire body. They're actually planning to tattoo him from top to bottom. The procedure takes several days, and by the end of it, Jeffrey has become
They turning him black? They're turning him black.
completely unrecognizable. One night, he is dropped off at the same location where he was abducted. Due to the large amounts of narcotics present inside his body, Jeffrey is not able to walk or talk properly, so he drags himself all the way home. When he finally sees himself in the car's mirror, he is taken aback to learn that he has become completely
He has the N-word pass.
black. The gangsters have tattooed every single inch of his body. As Jeffrey begins to panic, Krista suddenly wakes up from her sleep and assumes that an intruder is trying to barge into her house. So she immediately springs into action and brings out a handgun. After
She
she
had the
asks
9 on
Troy to
her.
hide, she
He
slowly
Black
heads
Panther
towards the
now.
door to confront the intruder. To her
Facts.
shock, she sees a dark, completely undressed male coming towards her. Krista is about to shoot at him, but right then she realizes that the man is actually her husband. She slowly lowers her weapon in disbelief, but the next second, a loud bang is heard, and Jeffrey drops to the floor. It turns out little Troy has shot his own father from behind,
What?
mistaking him for an intruder.
Wakanda Forever
At
is
the beginning of
crazy.
the third story, a young
So
teenager
just
named
so
Isaiah
Jude,
is
just
clutching
type
a
in
photograph
Discord,
and
like
eating
type
his
in the main
meat
chat,
when his
just
dad
say anything,
Sydney
and I
suddenly
got
walks
you.
in. The atmosphere is tense and awkward for a few seconds, but then Sydney approaches his son and starts explaining that this is very normal. Everyone does it in their free time because it's a fun thing to do. When Isaiah
Bro.
nervously asks his dad if he does it, Sydney says yes. This makes the teenager a bit more relaxed,
That's
and he thanks
crazy.
his dad for being an understanding person. However,
They'll
when
be
Sydney
dead.
leaves the room, it is shockingly revealed that the picture Isaiah was holding on to belonged to none other than his dad. Oh my.
What? Am I being punished?
14 years later, it is the biggest day of Isaiah's life. He is getting married. However, Sydney doesn't look happy at all. This is because he is
Jude,
constantly
are you Ryan's
abused
son
and
in the
harassed
Discord
by
server?
his own son. Even during the family
good
picture,
sorry, boy.
Isaiah cannot stop running his fingers through his dad's body. Later, we see
Oh
Sydney's
nah,
wife,
he
Jones,
is sus.
chatting and having a good time with all the guests. But
swinging
when she
that
doesn't
way,
see her
chat.
husband and son
He
around,
swings
she
that
becomes
way.
worried and starts looking for them. As she reaches near the toilet, she hears some grunting sounds, which she clearly recognizes. Joan nervously peeks through the door, and what she witnesses sends chills down her spine. Her own son is doing it with her husband.
That is disgusting.
I have to narrate this. This is my life. Days pass, but Sydney is still tormented by his son. Even his wife doesn't do anything to stop the monster. With no one to call for help, Sydney pours out his entire story in a memoir, which he titles Cocoon Man. Unfortunately,
Why would you go? Okay, you would say cocoon, man. You know what I'm saying? Cocoon, raccoon, baboon. You just it's all the same thing, is it not? Cho chat.
he blames himself for being tough on his son. A pretty good name, just like a Metapod or a Kakuna. He does appear to know how to use Harden. Unfortunately, he blames himself for not being tough on his son while he was growing up. A few months
Bro,
later,
that's
Sidney finishes his
crazy.
memoir, prints it, and then leaves it in the bedroom, hoping that his wife can read it whole and discover the tragic story. He is actually unaware that Joan already knows the truth. Unfortunately, before she can come out of the bathroom, Isaiah finds the memoir. He angrily confronts Sidney about it, and also warns him against making any copies in the future. Isaiah promises that he will unleash hell on his dad if the same case repeats again. Sadly, the terrified old man has no choice but to comply. One day, as Sidney is relaxing in the bathtub, wearing headphones, Isaiah suddenly starts knocking on the door. Sidney doesn't hear it, and this only makes the monster more aggressive. In a fit of rage, he breaks open the door and torments the poor man, making him scream for help. Downstairs, Joan hears everything, but she is too scared to react. She simply turns on the volume of her television and sobs in despair. This turns out to be the last straw for Sidney. So, the next morning, he gathers enough courage and prints another copy of the memoir. He now plans to submit it to the nearest publication and disclose all of his son's evil deeds. But unfortunately, just as he is about to exit the house, Isaiah catches him red-handed. He chastises his dad and calls him a traitor, saying he genuinely loved him. He also rants about how no one ever cared about him and his family. The long and rage-filled speech certainly moves Sidney, but he quickly shakes off his emotions to focus on his mission. He rushes out of the door and reaches the road, only to be hit by an oncoming truck. Isaiah witnesses the whole incident and becomes traumatized. He holds his dad's lifeless body and starts crying in the middle of the road. And soon after, Joan also joins him. In this way, an innocent, kind, and lovable man was killed because of his son's horrible actions. Cut to some days later. Sidney's funeral is organized and several people have arrived to pay their respects to the well-respected writer. This is when a grief-stricken Joan finally decides to confront her son. She corners him in a room and asks, when did it start? As expected, Isaiah tries to divert the topic, but Joan doesn't budge. When the conversation gets heated, she slaps him right across the face, and he does the same. Then they start striking each other with random objects.
He beating
Due to his
her.
physical presence, Isaiah gains the upper hand and is about to shove Joan into a lit fireplace. But luckily, she finds a fire iron and hits him with it. She then stabs him several times until he stops moving. The movie ends with Joan's gut-wrenching cries. In a matter of days, she has lost her entire family.
Kind of sick.
Oh, holy God.
I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry.
Just beating out to the man's husband, bro, which is crazy to me, chat.